Richard Calloway stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse, his reflection faint against the city skyline. The 81-year-old tech magnate had built his empire from a garage server in the 90s to a multi-billion-dollar data empire. But tonight, he wasn't thinking about code investments or legacy. He was thinking about control and betrayal. 3 weeks ago, his most trusted legal aid had brought him a folder. Inside private investigators' photos, audio recordings, and transcripts. All of it detailed a single, horrifying truth. His family, his blood, was circling him like vultures. His oldest son, Everett, was scheming with a board member to force early retirement. His daughter, Leela, was selling confidential family assets under shell companies. Even Benjamin, the loyal, youngest, had forged a signature to move $4 million from one of Richard's personal accounts. They weren't just greedy. They were ready for him to die. Richard lit a Cuban cigar with steady hands. He didn't get mad. He got strategic. So he made a phone call to Dr. Mira Halvorsen, private physician, former Navy medical intelligence, the one person on his payroll who knew how to lie like it was gospel truth. 3 days later, a headline made its way quietly into trusted financial circles. BRAKE. Tech billionaire Richard Calloway diagnosed with advanced neurodegenerative disorder. The public was told it was a rare, aggressive strain of Parkinson's. The press was briefed to expect his withdrawal from the business world. The board of Calloway Systems was assured a transition plan was in place, but inside the sterile, luxurious hospital suite he had built on the 47th floor of his private building, Richard sat upright in bed, heart rate monitor clipped to his finger for show, and watched hidden cameras beam every moment of family interaction directly to his private server. The first to arrive was Everett. He walked in briskly, expensive wool coat flapping behind him, holding a tablet and a barely disguised smirk. "Dad, I came the second I heard." Richard coughed. Weakly, "My time's short." "That's what they say." Everett sat. "You should rest. I'll handle things from here." Richard tilted his head. "Like you handled the boardroom vote last month." Everett's expression barely changed. "Just a flicker. We all want what's best for you." Richard nodded, noting the way Everett's fingers twitched over the tablet screen. "Don't worry, son. I'm watching everything closely." The moment Everett left, Richard smiled for the first time in weeks. One snake confirmed. Next came Leela. She wore black like it was a fashion statement, not a color of mourning. She cried loudly, but her eyes were dry, and her visit ended with a whisper into her phone. "He's weaker than I expected. Start the asset shift." Richard's nurse, the only one in on the plan, recorded every word. 2 snakes. Benjamin arrived last. No tears, no flowers. Just a quiet look, a hand on Richard's shoulder, and the words, "I'm sorry." For a moment, Richard's mask almost cracked, but then Benjamin whispered, "I transferred the money to protect it from them. Not from you." Richard raised an eyebrow. "Who are you protecting it from now?" Benjamin looked away. 3 snakes. Maybe 4. Later that night, Richard stood alone in his surveillance room, his hospital disguise long shed. The wall of monitors showed split screen feeds of his children's rooms, their calls, their emails, their private conversations. They all thought he was dying. But Richard was just getting started. The next phase was already in motion. He called his lawyer and changed his will. He left everything to none of them. Instead, he appointed an executor, a name no one had heard in years. His first wife. Their mother, Diane. A woman his children believed to be dead. Because that's what he told them. The knock came at precisely 10,000 a.m. Lila was seated at the head of the long marble breakfast table in Richard's townhouse, sipping coffee like a CEO. Benjamin sat across from her, hungover, bloodshot, silent. Everett was pacing, barking into a Bluetooth headset about liquidation options. Then the butler, Malcolm, stepped in with his usual flat effect. "There's a woman here to see you," he said. "She says her name is Diane Calloway." The room froze. Lila's cup shattered on the floor. Benjamin looked up, pale. Everett, smug, cold Everett, snorted. "That's impossible. She's quite insistent." Everett waved him off. "Tell her to leave. Our mother's been dead 20 years. Malcolm hesitated. "Serg, I saw her death certificate. I also saw her driver's license. Same name, same birth date, same face. Lila stood abruptly. Face? Malcolm stepped aside. And in walked Diane Calloway, not a ghost, not a memory. A woman very much alive. She wore a tailored navy dress, heels, and pearl earrings. Her silver-streaked hair was tied back in a sharp bun. Her eyes, sharp and calm, scanned the room like a general stepping onto a battlefield. "Hello, children," she silenced. Then, "You're not real," Benjamin whispered. "You're not her." Diane smiled faintly. "You were 6 when I left, Ben, but I remember the way you used to clutch my hand when you were scared." She turned to Everett. "And you always wanted to be in charge, even when you were 8, stealing checks from your father's desk. Finally, to Lilag, you hated dresses. But you wore one for me on Mother's Day, said I was worth it." No one spoke. "Your father has asked me to serve as executor of his estate," Diane continued, "effective immediately." Everett laughed, sharp and mirthless. "He's dying, not dead." Diane tilted her head. "Actually, inside, he's both, depending on which document you believe." She opened a slim leather folder and placed it on the table. Inside were 2 papers, a notarized will, incited last week, naming her as sole executor, a power of attorney form granting her temporary legal control over Richard's holdings. "He trusts me," she said simply. "He's made that clear." The next 48 hours exploded like a Molotov in a wine cellar. Everett tried to call the board, only to find his access revoked. Diane had already changed the digital locks. Leela attempted to redirect assets via her Cayman Islands shell accounts. Within hours, they were flagged, locked and frozen. Benjamin tried to get a private meeting with his father. He was denied. "I don't understand," Benjamin said to Diane over lunch the next day. "You've been gone for decades. Why now? Why this?" Diane's eyes darkened. "Because your father made a mistake. He thought wealth was protection. It wasn't. It was gasoline. And all of you brought the matchsticks." She leaned forward. "He's watching you. All of you. Every word, every move. Consider this your trial by fire." That night, Everett broke into his father's surveillance room. He thought he was being clever, using an old security override code only the family knew. But as soon as he reached for the hard drives, red lights flared, sirens blared. Security guards armed and unamused dragged him out in cuffs. Not real police. Private security. The kind that doesn't report anything without permission. Meanwhile, Lila began charming Diane, playing the good daughter, bringing flowers, offering tea, making sly references to the good old days. Diane wasn't fooled. She met Lila's syrupy tone with pure steel. "I buried the woman you became the day I left," Diane said. "You don't want family. You want an empire." Lila's smile cracked. "So what? Isn't that what he wanted too?" "Not anymore," Diane said. "He doesn't want kings or queens. Inside, he wants someone who remembers what it means to be human." Benjamin did something different. He stopped scheming. He started sitting outside Richard's hospital room every morning, reading books, not saying a word. Waiting, Diane noticed. So did the nurse. Even Richard, behind his two-way mirror, watched with unreadable eyes. One evening, Diane sat next to Benjamin. "You're not like them," she said. "I wanted to be." "For a long time," he replied. "But I'm tired of playing games I don't understand." She nodded. "Then, maybe you're the only one who still has a chance." 2 days later, Everett was back. Enraged. "You're not our mother." He snarled in front of the whole family. "You're a puppet. He's using you to play some sick game." Diane looked at him coolly. "I never claimed to be your mother again," she said. "I'm just the mirror. What you see in me is who you've become." She handed him a black envelope. Inside a copy of the footage from the surveillance room, audio, video, full transcripts of every betrayal. "Your father faked his illness for one reason," she said. "To see which of you deserved what's coming." She paused. "And you, Everett, you deserve nothing." A rain lashed against the windows of the Calloway estate, streaking the glass like claw marks. Inside, tension coiled around every conversation, every glance, every sip of wine. The estate, once a fortress of power and privilege, had become a war zone, and Diane was winning. With every passing day, She gained more control, freezing accounts, signing contracts, calling the shots. Her presence wasn't just legal. It was surgical, cutting the rot from the Calloway name. And Everett, Lila, and Benjamin, they were the tumors under the knife. But one of thing was ready to fight back. It started with a whisper. Then a mess, a plan. If she's gone, the world changes. Right. Lila found Everett in the West Wing study. He was standing by their father's antique globe bar, pouring bourbon like it was medicine. The storm cast flickering shadows across his face, sharpening the bone under his skin. She's not just here for control, Lila said. She's here for revenge. Everett turned slowly. Inside, you think I don't know that? She's humiliated us. Publicly. I'm being audited. My entire Cayman structure is crumbling. Good, Everett muttered. You were sloppy. Lila narrowed her eyes. We can destroy each other, Everett, or we can take back what's ours. Together. He said nothing. So she went for the throat. If Diane dies, the last will becomes invalid. In power of attorney becomes null. We go back to Dad's original plan. Ours. Everett looked up and smiled. They moved quickly. Diane had taken the East Wing suite, the most secure part of the house, with a private stairwell and biometric locks. But Everett still had legacy access to the maintenance schematics. At 2004, he shut down the East Wing's cameras for a scheduled software patch. At 2007, Lila slipped through the service hall with a small black case. It wasn't a weapon. It was poison subtle. Untraceable. A fast metabolizing neurotoxin derived from rare puffish enzymes. It would mimic a stroke. Death in under 30 seconds. She only needed one moment. One drop, in Diane's tea. But Diane wasn't asleep. She was waiting. In the dark. When Lila entered the suite, gloved, hooded, silent, Diane turned on the bedside light. You never could pick locks quietly. Lila froze. Diane rose from the chair, wearing a robe, barefoot, calm. What's in the case? Lila said nothing. Poison? Diane asked. Let me guess. Tetrodotoxin. Tasteless, kills like lightning. Lila lunged for the table, trying to grab the cup, to pour it out, destroy the evidence. But guards flooded in from the shadows, guns drawn, and behind them, Richard Calloway himself. He looked like a ghost. White hair slicked back. No tubes, no monitors, no weakness, just power. Cold, burning in his eyes. Lila gasped. You're supposed to be dying, Richard finished. I was. To you. Everett was dragged in next, kicking, shouting. You bastard! He screamed at his father. You lied. You staged this whole thing! Richard walked up to him face to face. I built this empire from code, lies, and calculated risks, he said, sighed. And now I know what you do if I let my guard down. He looked at the case, then back at Everett. You conspired to murder your mother. She's not my mother, Everett spat. She carried you in her body for 9 months. Richard growled. She gave you a name, and when she left, you never asked why. You just took it as an opportunity. Silence. Then Diane said softly, your father didn't fake his illness to trick you. She stepped beside Richard. He faked it to expose you. The next morning, headlines exploded. A Calloway hero tour. Billionaire patriarch reveals staged illnesses. Everett was booked. Illa was placed under feral investigation. Only Benjamin remained untouched. And Richard released a video statement to the world. In it, he appeared strong, poised, clear-eyed. Power is not what you pass down. It's what people choose to deserve. I tested my hires. 2 failed. 1 ick may still be worthy. This empire was never meant to die with me. But now it might finally live beyond me. That evening, Richard met Benjamin in the estate's greenhouse. He was holding a pair of pruning shears, trimming a bonsai. I used to think money was the only legacy, Richard said without looking up. Then I watched what it did to you 3. And I realized it was a curse. Benjamin said nothing. I want to name a new heir, Richard continued, not just of wealth, but a vision, of values. Why me? Benjamin asked. I made mistakes too. Yes, Richard said. But you stopped. He clipped a leaf from the tree. And that's what real power is. Not domination. Not inheritance. Change. The Calloway estate was quieter now. Lila had lawyered up and retreated to a townhouse in Zurich. Everett, awaiting trial, was under house arrest in New York. The media storm had reached a fever pitch. The fake illness billionaire story was dominating headlines, sparking talk shows, conspiracy theories, and think pieces. But inside the estate, a new story was unfolding, one no one outside would ever know. Richard's final test, and Benjamin Calloway was at its center. Richard sat Benjamin down in the library, the oldest room in the house. The walls were lined with first editions, war medals, and family photographs in gilded frames. One large oil painting loomed above the fire, placing Richard in his prime, arms crossed, fire in his eyes. "I've changed the will," Richard said, sliding a document across the table. "Everything. The company, the assets, the land, the patents, will transfer to you in 90 days. Benjamin stared at it. "Why tell me now?" "Because I need to know who you are before the money becomes real." Richard leaned forward. "There's one more thing, one more truth." He tapped the table. "I lied about more than the illness." Richard led Benjamin to a vault in the East Wing. It hadn't been opened in decades. With a key, a thumbprint, and a retinal scan, the thick steel door hissed open. Inside was a single item, a VS tape labeled simply 1994. Richard placed it in a player. Static, then footage of a hospital room, a woman in labor, screaming, crying, nurses rushing. Inside, and Diane, but not giving birth, standing by the bed, holding someone's hand. The woman in labor was someone else, and the child born that night was Benjamin. Benjamin's voice cracked. "I was adopted." Richard nodded slowly. "Diane and I had split. She couldn't have children anymore, but we found you. You were born into tragedy. Your biological mother died in that bed minutes later. No one came for you. No one even named you." Richard turned, eyes glassy. "We did." Benjamin backed away from the screen. Why are you showing me this now?" "Because you need to know what blood doesn't mean," Richard said. "Everett and Leela. They're my blood, but they betrayed me. You had every reason to be like them. But you weren't. You changed. That makes you my son more than they ever were." Benjamin shook his head. "This changes everything. Everything I thought I was." "No," Richard said. "This reveals who you actually are." But the revelation hit hard. Benjamin vanished for 3 days. No texts, no calls, just gone. A Diane found him in the ruins of the old family cabin, tucked into the woods 3 hours north. He was chopping wood. In the rain. "You came to see if I broke," he said. "No," she replied. "I came to see if you understood." Benjamin didn't stop swinging the axe. "You think I'm some moral compass, but I faked signatures, I moved money, I did it all. Just not with poison. That's the only difference." "Wrong," Diane said. "The difference is you felt guilt. You stopped. They didn't." She stepped closer. "Being good doesn't mean never failing. It means never surrendering to failure." Back at the estate, Richard was unraveling something of his own. The surveillance logs. There were anomalies. Encrypted transmissions sent during the fake illness period. Access breaches even Diane hadn't noticed. Financial backdoors, email hacks, and all of them traced back to Benjamin. But not recently. Months ago, before Richard faked his illness. A chilling thought landing. Had Benjamin known about the plan before it even started? When Benjamin returned, Richard confronted him. Why were you in my systems before the diagnosis?" Benjamin didn't flinch. "Because I was watching you." Richard raised an eyebrow. "I knew something was off," Benjamin said. "Your health reports were too clean. Your behavior was too rehearsed. So I followed the trail. And you said nothing." "I wanted to see what you'd do," Benjamin said. "How far you'd go." "You wanted a test, so did I," Richard laughed. Once, a deep, raspy bark. "You clever bastard." Then, silence. That night, Richard made a final video. One only Benjamin would see. In it he spoke not as a mogul or a father, but as a man preparing to let go. "In this world chews men like me up, builds us into gods, then tears us down when we blink. But you're not like me. That's why this must end with you. Not as an empire, but as a legacy. Be ruthless if you must, but never stop being human. I faked illness to see who would kill for the crown. But I give it to the one who never asked for it." 2 weeks later, the Calloway estate was draped in black velvet and silence. Not because Richard Calloway was sick. This time, he was truly gone. The announcement hit the news at 7:01 a.m. sharp. Billionaire Richard Calloway dies at 81. Legacy in limbo. The official statement cited cardiac arrest. Privately, Dine knew better. Richard had stopped taking his medication. He chose the hour, the day, even the music. Bach's Mass in B minor playing softly in the background. He died the same way he lived in, with total control. At the funeral, the vultures returned, investors, politicians, journalists, estranged relatives, grieving sycophants. All of them flocked to the marble cathedral like it was a stock market waiting to rise. Everett wasn't there. Still under investigation, Lila came, in all black, sunglasses, and silence. She hugged Benjamin stiffly, whispered, "It should have been me." Benjamin didn't answer. Diane stood at the altar. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She simply said, "Richard Calloway was not a good man, but he was a great one. And now the world will find out which matters more." After the service, Benjamin was handed a sealed envelope. Not from Richard, from the board. An emergency meeting was called. He walked into the Calloway Systems headquarters under security escort, past reporters screaming his name. Inside, 12 executives sat in dark suits, eyes sharp, predatory. On the table, 2 folders. One bore Benjamin's name, the other Dine's. The chairman, a grey-skinned man with the patience of a shark, said, "Your father left behind 2 wills. One names you as successor." "And the other?" Benjamin asked. "Leaves everything in control of Dine, as a trust for public redistribution, scholarships, climate tech, no-profit alliances." Benjamin blinked. "He left you a choice," Chairman added. "We need your decision. Now." Benjamin took both folders, walked out, past the boardroom, past the elevators. All the way to the rooftop, the city buzzed below, millions of lives blinking like fireflies. He opened the folders. Inside, his total control. To 18.6 billion in hard assets, full voting rights, complete command, inside Dine's reform, redistribution. A dismantling of the very empire Richard had spent his life building. And between them, a handwritten note. "Benjamin, the only real power is the power to give it away. I gave you everything. Not to keep it, but to see if you'd set it free. The Calloway name can be a throw-nip or it can be a torch. Choose carefully." Dad of Benjamin returned downstairs. The boardroom buzzed as he entered. He placed both folders on the table. "I'm combining them," he said. The room fell silent. "You can't do that," one director said. "Yes," Benjamin replied. "I can." He turned to Diane, who had just entered. "You said this family needed fire inside. I say it needs light." He pointed to the wall of monitors, the company's live global feed. "We've spent decades building walls. Now we build bridges." Benjamin signed both documents, merged the structures, and walked out, into history. 6 months later, Calloway Systems was reborn. The half of its capital was redirected to infrastructure and education in developing nations. The board became an open trust advisory council. Executives were made to reapply under a new code of ethics. Benjamin declined the title of CEO. Instead, he became chairman emeritus, a guide, not a king, and Diane. She disappeared from public life once again, only this time by choice. As for Everett, convicted of conspiracy to commit attempted murder. 10 years, Lila. Permanently exiled from the company, her assets seized under new legal frameworks Benjamin personally authorized. No revenge, just consequence. And Benjamin, he kept nothing for himself. Sold the penthouse, moved into a modest apartment in Brooklyn. But every morning, he walked past a bronze plaque outside the new headquarters, in honor of Richard Calloway, who taught us how to build, and in honor of Benjamin Calloway, who taught us when to let go. And in the end, the world didn't remember Richard for his billions. Inside, it remembered the son who took a forged empire of power and turned it into a legacy of purpose.